So I got a few messages asking for my thoughts on Kiko Martinez versus Scott Quigg. I've already done a video on this, and I probably made quite a rookie error releasing it well ahead of the fight. Nobody was interested, nobody watched the initial video at the time, and now people want to know the thoughts. So without further ado, here is the original video. Everything in this still stands as far as I'm confirmed, but please bear in mind these thoughts were initially recorded over a month ago. Ever since this fight was announced, I've had a number of people message me asking for a pre-fight video, early thoughts on the matchup. It's an interesting one. It's one I'm keen to discuss. Now, I think a lot of people don't like Eddie Hearn. A lot of people don't like Sky Boxing. And I think very often Scott Quigg is one of the guys who is kind of used as a scapegoat. He's one of these guys who's a paper world champion, who's never fought anyone, and is the classic sort of guy fans like to tear a strip of. And now he's fighting Kiko Martinez, which is perceived to be a real test. People want to hear about it. And I think they want to hear about it for two reasons. One, they're keen to sort of find out whether a massive blow will be dealt to Eddie Hearn, with one of his boys getting exposed horribly. And two, I think there's a gambling element involved. Early indications that Kiko Martinez will start a 3-1 underdog. So in other sense, in what most perceive to be a 50-50 fight, you can get prices with the bookmakers that suggest Kiko Martinez only has a 25% chance of winning. So I think people are interested in it for those two reasons. Now, I've had to think about the fight. I've done a bit of looking into it. I've watched a few old fights back, and I've changed my mind here. I've changed my mind. Let me tell you what I thought initially when this fight was made. Now, in fact, before I get to that, let me tell you my thoughts initially on Scott Quigg. I do not rate Scott Quigg. As we've already discussed, he's never fought anyone. Now, I'm not going to talk through his record. You can go on BoxRec and find that for yourself. But the truth is, he has not operated at a very high level within the sport. Realistically, he has not, been tested at the highest level. And Kiko Martinez is a definite step up in terms of the experience and capability that he brings to the ring. So I do feel that's relevant. But the truth is with Scott Quigg is he's not an entertaining fighter. He's not the best mover. He's not the biggest puncher. He's not the best defensive fighter. And we've seen him lose rounds, drop draws. He drew with Salinas, or Salinas, as Eddie Hearn calls him. He's just not the most convincing fighter. For me, Carl Frampton is a much more well-rounded, versatile individual who's got a much higher upside than Scott Quigg. What Scott Quigg does have is lovely sort of mid-range, long-range body punching. Very, very good body puncher from mid to long range, and I'll give him that. But I think the perception is that Kiko Martinez is all wrong for Quigg stylistically, because I think people do not believe that Quigg has a big enough jab, a strong enough, a good enough jab, a good enough outside game to keep Martinez off. I think people see Kiko Martinez walking forward, coming to get Scott Quigg, and relentless, aggressive, come forward fighter. And I think people struggle to believe that Scott Quigg will be able to keep him on the outside, keep him at the end of the jab all night. And to be honest, I agree with that. Scott Quigg, he doesn't strike me as one of these guys with a sort of absolute battering ram jab. His movement is, unexceptional. He's fit, he's kind of big at the weight, he's kind of a strong guy, but you can't really see him being able to fend off a Kiko Martinez from the outside. And I think unlike Carl Frampton, I don't think Quigg is necessarily as silky smooth. So I think while Carl Frampton maybe wouldn't just jab Martinez's head off, Carl Frampton would slip out the way. Carl Frampton would pivot. Carl Frampton would change the angles up. And I don't think people perceive Scott Quigg as necessarily having that capability. So I think it's an interesting fight for that reason, because the perceived logic would be that Quigg cannot afford to get into a war with Kiko Martinez. He can't afford to just trade it up with Kiko Martinez on the inside And it's got to be a case of Quigg trying to jab, score points, move, jab, score points, move. So I guess what I'm getting at is, first thoughts of this is that this is all wrong for Quigg. You know, he's not been tested at this level. When he's moved up a level, he's not looked as good. And Kiko Martinez is a relentless, aggressive guy who's going to cause him all sorts of bother. And that may well prove to be the case. And I would agree that Scott Quigg probably doesn't keep a top form Kiko Martinez outside of the jab all night. And I'd agree that Scott Quigg probably cannot afford to trade with Kiko Martinez inside the pocket. However, my instinct, and I reserve the right to change this, because I usually would post this video in the run up to the fight like the week before. I'm doing it now because a number of people have mentioned it to me, but whilst I reserve the right to change my mind on this, my instinct is that I will pick Scott Quigg for this fight. There are several reasons for that. I mean, Kiko Martinez is viewed as this, you know, relentless guy. But let's be honest, he's dropped 5 losses. Yeah, there's the 2 losses to Frampton which are excusable, but there are lesser losses early on in his career, you know, Monroe, etc. Now, Kiko Martinez is a guy who, as Eddie Hearn put it, has recently earned a few quid. You know, the question is, with 5 losses on his record, with recent financial success, how motivated is he actually going to be now at the, you know, autumn of his career, so we say? I think the other thing definitely worth factoring in is the fact that, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kiko Martinez is, or has actually been campaigning in the weight division below since the Carl Frampton loss. I think he's only had 1 fight, but I believe he was looking to drop to bantam, and this fight is at super bantam. So Scott Quigg is someone who I view as big at the weight, who will probably move up from super bantam, and he's facing a guy in Kiko Martinez who ideally wants to campaign 1 weight division below. So potentially, you know, in 6 months' time, we'll be looking at 2 guys who are separated here by 2 weight divisions. And that potentially is a relevant factor, especially when you consider the styles of the fights and the fact that it may be fought at close range. There may be a bit of a strength factor involved. And whether you don't like Scott Quigg or not, Scott Quigg is a strong guy. Scott Quigg is a very, very fit guy. I think that maybe the size difference could play a part here. Now, I know styles make fights. It's the old cliche. And I think stylistically this is all wrong for Quigg. But I think it's about momentum. And I think it's about the fight on the night. And where I'm at with this is, on the night, Scott Quigg is going to be the home fighter. He's going to be a world champion. He's going to be coming in undefeated, you know, looking to set up super fights with Carl Frampton, Rigo, Luis Santa Cruz, Nonito Donet. Whereas Martinez is going to be fighting away from home, turning up for another payday. I mean, when you've got 5 losses in your career, does it really matter if it's 5 or 6 losses? Whereas when you're Scott Quigg and you're undefeated, being undefeated and having a loss is a huge, huge game changer. I know it doesn't always work out this way, but my thought process is that Martinez has had bad losses against Carl Frampton. There's a lot of footage out there on how to beat him, and he can be outboxed by a potentially younger, bigger, fitter opponent in Scott Quigg. I don't think Scott Quigg's anything special, and I think it could stylistically be interesting if Martinez can come inside the jab and engage Quigg in the pocket. But I think on balance, Martinez is slightly predictable. I don't think Martinez is going to turn up with a box of tricks. I think we all know exactly what he's going to do. He's going to be walking forward. He's going to be trying to get into close range. And I think Quigg can maybe outwork him. I think Quigg can maybe do the better work on the outside. And I think Quigg will have the fitness and the momentum in his career to kind of avoid getting destroyed on the inside. That's just my thoughts. We're a long way away from the fight still. I reserve the right to change them closer to the time after I see the build-up, but that's what my instinct is at this stage. Right now, I wouldn't be looking to bet on this fight. I'll say that for nothing, you know. I don't think Scott Quigg is value, but I wouldn't be betting my dollar on, on Kiko Martinez to get the away win. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.